The revival of Carnival of Souls reached a climax of sorts on November 24th, 1989, here at the Liberty Hall Theater in Lawrence, Kansas. The film was re-premiered and most of the cast and crew were reunited at a special benefit for the Lawrence Film Commission. Within the crowd of over 300 attending the event were some of the original investors in the film.
Well, we were friends of Herk Harvey and John Clifford. They were good customers. I was in the real estate and insurance business at that time, and they were good customers, and they came to us needing some help. We thought they had a lot of talent. We thought it'd be kind of exciting. It'd be a little break from real estate, so we put up our $1,000, about 4 of us in the firm, each.
Among the cast and crew in attendance were, of course, writer John Clifford and director-actor Herk Harvey, along with Candace Hilligoss, who played Mary Henry, Sidney Berger, who played leering neighbor John Linden, Art Ellison and Stan Levitz, who played respectively the minister and the doctor, and Larry Sneegas, the kid who began the drag race which started the film. Sneegas was also the movie's production manager. Earlier in the day, a press conference was held at the Eldridge Hotel, and Herk Harvey appeared in his famous ghoul costume and makeup.
Actually, it is amazing that there has been a revival of Carnival of Souls. It was made in 1961, released in 1962, and the very fact that we're here today, 27 years later, doing all this Mickey Mouse and so forth, saying that we're enjoying the revival of Carnival of Souls is fun. It's fun, I think, for all of us that were in it, because we thought that about 25 years ago it had died a natural death.
I made that when I was a graduate student here at the University of Kansas, and I do remember that we shot all night frequently, and I remember equally well that I kept falling asleep in my classes every day because I couldn't manage a 24-hour-a-day schedule. But I had a wonderful time, and I don't think the film ever really died because friends of mine in Europe and throughout the country kept sending me pages torn out of TV Guide saying it was appearing on Supernatural Theater or the equivalent somewhere in the country. So in all the 27 years, I don't think there's been a year when it has not been shown somewhere, much to my amazement.
I was in a New York subway in August, and I picked up the Daily News, and the headline in the theater section said, "The movie that refused to die." And I read it, and I thought, well, this sounds very interesting. And then all of a sudden, I was reading about myself, and I almost fell into the subway track in total shock. And then I went around to the other newsstands, and I said, are there reviews out? And I opened up, and there was a 6-inch picture of myself coming out of the mud in the Daily News. And then I realized there was a renaissance. And then I was sitting in a beauty shop, and the hairdresser at Kenneth's was bragging about the movie star's hair that he was cutting, and I happened to flip open the New York magazine, and I saw Pick of the Week, Carnival of Souls. And I said, you didn't know you had a cult heroine in your chair, did you? And of course he was quite flabbergasted, as I was flabbergasted, because it was all over town. So it was a lot of fun. It was very exciting, and it was fun to see that it's getting recognized. I guess you can only say, you know, better late than never, even if it is a few years after the fact.
I've got to tell you that this has not been easy for me in classrooms, particularly when someone like Roger Ebert reviews the film and says of me that I was the definitive study of a nerd in lust, which was, I think, run a close second to in the Dallas, I forget which Dallas paper, but the Morning News, which said I was a greasy on-the-make dude. Others just said I was greasy, so they had a long way to go before Mr. Ebert's review. But I told my class I didn't know where I could go from here after being the definitive nerd in lust. It's been great fun for me, too. And frankly, the whole notion of how a film like ours got made is really a kind of miracle in itself when you realize how it was shot and the kinds of resources that John and Herk had to work with. I think what you see on the screen is really rather remarkable. And every time I see it, I admire it more in terms of how we were able to just accomplish what we had with such limited resources.
Do you remember the day you got in the car?
You mean the day you forced me in?
Right.
And held me in?
there was a policeman there, and he had to leave or arrest me, so I guess he thought it was diplomatic to leave, and I think Candace could have killed him and me both, because it was cold.
I think it's also a lesson for actors and the whole notion of doing the best you can, regardless of the circumstances you're in. I mean, having Candace in that car in freezing water and all the rest, Candace still had a real job to do of acting. And I mean, there were times, because of the economies of the film, where I remember one shot where Candace had to, we walked into the house where we were shooting one night, and the first shot of the night was Candace getting hysterical, having seen death in the mirror after my kissing her neck. I don't know if there was something significant about that, but it was very difficult for Candace to do. I mean, to walk in out of the cold and suddenly get emotionally very excited. So we just went off to a corner and talked about it some, and then we went back and got it, I think, in one take, did we not? And the other is, I'll never forget the fact that there was one shot of my left eye filling the entire screen when Candace was in the room of her boarding house taking a bath, and it was supposed to be a very salacious look, and it filled the entire screen. Well, I've been blind on this eye since birth, and all of my friends with very methody came to me and said, Sidney, what did you do? I mean, that look was fabulous. And of course, I was reading a newspaper, I think, with this eye while they were shooting this one.
People would keep asking me to write Carnival of Souls 2. So far, I've been resisting. I don't know why they don't ask me to write something else. But,
when this was first shown, it was shown primarily in drive-ins as part of a double bill with The Devil's Messenger. And now, in its re-release, it's being shown in the art houses, which is where we would like to have had it the first time around. And as far as we're concerned, that's great. Makes all the difference.
Prior to the evening screening, the cast and crew of the film were honored during an informal stage discussion introduced by Judy Billings of the Lawrence Film Commission.
Secondly, I'd like to again thank the Lawrence Film Commission for showing Carnival of Souls tonight and allowing those of us up here to have a 27-year reunion. It's just like having a class reunion. It's strange to see these people, and an hour after you're together, they all look just like they did when we were making the film, although it was 27 years ago. Another thing I'd like to say before we get started here is about Lawrence. Lawrence has been wonderful to John, to me. It's been a great place to make films, and this film, I don't know how it's happening, quite frankly. I don't know how it's getting this revival, but it's happening and almost beyond our control. But the thing that is so nice is that we had 35 years of making motion pictures here, and I see many friends that I worked at Centron with here in town making motion pictures, and we had a lot of good years making films, and the people of Lawrence and the Lawrence community is what made it a great experience for us. It couldn't have been better. I think everybody here, a good example of these investors tonight. Joe Traylor told me if I ever wanted to make a feature, he could probably get some money. I told him on Friday night, on Monday, he had $17,000. With deferred salaries, we made the total show for $30,000, which I went last night to see. Back to the Future 2. And I'm sure that one of the special effects in there would cost more than the total budget of Carnival. Another thing you get with 27 years is senility. Now, about Carnival, I think let's just start it the way it happened. John wrote it. John, tell us about it.
well, let's see, that was 27 years ago. To be honest, I can't even remember writing it. As I remember, my inspiration for the story was that Herk said if I would write a script, he would produce it. That's your world-famous moneymaker. The writer doesn't get that kind of offer very often. So I would have, at that stage in my career, I would have written anything. So I said, what kind of story do you want? And he said, I don't know, but I wanted to end up with dead people dancing in a ballroom by the Great Salt Lake. I said, sounds good to me.
And when I came to Lawrence, I learned that low budget means you don't have a double, you don't have a stunt woman, you you don't have a makeup person, you do your own hair and you do your own makeup. It also meant that you also go into the water for 8 hours at a time. And the director had promised me Indian summer in late September. And somehow Indian summer didn't come. Then we got into a department store in Salt Lake City, and 6 of us, we just trooped upstairs with up an escalator. We didn't stop to ask permission, and I think Herk went over to a sales lady and said, listen, for 25 bucks, would you look the other way? Let us go in this dressing room with this woman. She wants to change her clothes and not let anyone else come in. She said, sure, for $25, she'd look the other way. So they came in, and as you'll see, that's how it was done. And so, in many ways, you see, anyone can make a movie when you have $8 million and a crew of 150 people. That's easy. Try making Carnival of Souls. So I'll let Sidney tell you the rest.
Well, I had a wonderful time. I was a graduate student here at KU when we were making Carnival of Souls, and the story about how I got into it is kind of interesting. One gentleman in the audience, Larry Sneegas, probably hates my guts because I took the part away from him. I was asked to read opposite several young ladies that Herk was considering before we got Candace. And he said, well, I like the way you read. I've got the part cast, but I'll shift this young man to something else, for which I'm eternally grateful. And I will be staying away from Larry for the rest of the evening. But we shot a lot of the scenes that I was in all night. We had to shoot all night because Herk was trying to get this film done in an hour or an hour and a half at the outside.
Thank you so very much.
All in all, it was a very successful night for Carnival of Souls. Articles about the reunion appeared in People magazine, Film Facts, and Cine Fantastique, a publication that brought Carnival of Souls to public attention in a 1983 feature story. Currently, Carnival of Souls is available on videocassette in several versions. Only the 84-minute cut is the version director Herk Harvey put back together in 1989. This may not be the end of the story, but it's certainly a better one than it had in 1962.